Hello and welcome.
Hello.
Good morning.
So composting, the great news is if you pile all your rubbish from your allotment and anything you've got on your allotment into a big pile, it will turn into compost eventually. So it's not something you need to be too finicky about, but by doing composting in a different way, the way that I do it, you gain time and you also eliminate seeds. I've done this pile 2 days ago, and all it comprises of is the grass that was cut up here and this stuff here, the wood chips, the fine wood chips. So all the big ones, I've sifted it all out, so the lumpy stuff I haven't put in there, the fine stuff is in there, because the lumpy stuff, it takes a long time to get, it'll turn to compost eventually, but the fine stuff will make it kind of mixing them well in. Now if you haven't got a nice pile of wood chips there, or you don't particularly want to use wood chips, you can use like pig bedding, not pig bedding, guinea pig bedding, rabbit bedding, that sort of thing. There'll be a few nuggets in there which helps things along, of course, but that's all hay and sort of stuff. The sort of stuff, the wood shreddings that you get in this last a little bit longer than the wood that's composted there. For some reason, it takes a longer time to actually get that into compost than anything else. I also use bracken as an ingredient, which is sieved and put through a sieve like this, and it gets down to this lovely stuff. Now you can see how fine that is. It's absolutely wonderful stuff. It's almost on the way as it is. It's probably the best stuff that you'll get. And I'll keep the bigger stuff out. Now, if you wanted to lawnmower that at the same time as you're doing the grass, that will reduce it down to a size that the compost can handle. Okay. Now, if you're just using this stuff, it's very fine, so it'll clog up very easily. So what I do is I mix in some garden browns, which is this is sunflower stalks, sweet corn stalks from last year, left out on the allotment. It was very brittle, and the nice thing is they're hollow inside, so they trap air. So if that's in the centre of the pile, you've got a nice air pocket in there. That is a useful addition to any compost pile. And in the centre there is a pile of those sort of things, and that will help you not have to turn it so often. Okay. Now then, all this is very fine, but you do need to turn it. As you can see over here on the temperature gauge, you can see it's up in the red there, so it's indicating that it's active after only 2 days. Because you were saying, is it after a week? Nope, it's just 2 days. And all the weed seeds that are in there will be killed. Don't know if you've seen the grass when it was before I cut it, but it was full of the plantain and dandelions and that sort of thing. I don't worry about that, because that will all be killed off by this heat process. I also add at this stage weeds with soil on them at this stage, because there'll be weed seeds in there and you want to kill them off as well. So on the first turn, when it's all nice and hot and I know it's all going, I'll introduce a nice little weed seeds if they're around and put them in. But you don't generally want too much soil in the pile, because that'll kill it. Soil is inert, so it won't actually do anything for your compost, but it won't harm it either. Now, the one thing that you've got to remember is that when you're adding all these browns, to make sure that you add water, because it's surprising how much water this takes. And the rule of thumb is when you pick up compost that's undergoing, not now, you should be able to squeeze it and get 2 drops of water out. Then you know it's moist enough.
Oh, so it's quite wet then?
Yeah. It's going to be doing more harm being dry than it will be wet. And then you get too wet, and that's too much. But it'll drain through. It's compost, it's not going to stay there like forever. If you wanted to do yourself a favour, then something else I should have bought me. You can add molasses to it, which is just say 5 teaspoons of molasses to hot water. Mix it in the watering can, and that will help give the compost at the beginning a real good boost, because all the microbiology gets a feast of that lovely nutrients, and gets going. So that can help if you wanted to. So that's the first phase.
Turn it.
Well, all I do, I haven't got anything in here to show you, and
Yeah.
I would love to have, but all I literally do is take this one off, quickly, take a slice of a third of it out and remove it, put this one back over the 2/3, and basically move it around in the bin.
Right.
It saves 60% of the work.
And then you put the third back on the top.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and if you want to add anything, you just layer it in as you go.
Right, okay.
So it's quite easy. When I turn that one, I'll do the same. I won't actually put it in over into the next bay until, say, about 10 days in. But I'll remove a third, take it out, and then collapse it over to the left, and then collapse the next lot over to the left, and then put the last lot in. I'm a lazy git, and you've got to find the easiest way,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And I didn't get any heat. What was I doing wrong?
Well, that was my fault,
Right, okay.
and I didn't realise at the time. One of the ingredients I encouraged you to put in was leaves.
Yeah.
You can do. What I didn't think about was we've got a majority of oak trees around here.
Yeah.
Oak trees' leaves have got very high substance called lignin,
Right.
which really takes a little while to break down,
Right.
and it'll be fine as a small ingredient, but as a main ingredient, it was wrong. You know,
So it's better off
I'll give you
grass
rubbish
and this.
information.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Gary's got a job to do.
But if you looked in now, I bet it's quite a way on the way.
No, it was fine. So what I did, I just then just piled it on and just left it over the winter, and
Yeah.
it was fine. But I wanted to get that nice hot started going.
Yeah.
But I mean, it went on the garden.
Don't forget, before I got success that I can do it every time, I probably failed more times than anybody. You know, trying to get things going and you eventually click and you realise that moisture is often half the battle, and texture with the odd bits and pieces like that in there. Because if that doesn't rot down, that's not a problem. You just poke it out at the end and put it in the next bowl. So you haven't got to worry about that too much. All of these other substances should rot down. Bracken can take a little bit longer in its longer form. It's quite shiny, and if you use straw, that's quite shiny, and the moisture doesn't get into it so easy unless it's chopped up really small. So there is a reason why that won't break down very fast.
So how long would the first phase, would you say, takes?
Well, if you've got everything working out right and you turn every 2 or 3 days, 18 days.
Right, okay.
The compost that I should have had up here in the bay down there took 16 days, and it's to that mulch standard. So it's not perfect. It's not like you see in the wheelbarrow over there that I'll show you later on. It's at a quite a rough standard. The idea when it's compost is you don't recognise any of the ingredients.
Yeah.
So, and you could do it in after 18 days. But the idea is that that's all finished, all the seeds are gone, and then you go to phase 2. But let me just see if there's any more questions.
Do you need to cover it for a while or just leave it open?
You can leave it open, but if you get a lot of rain, that will kill the heat completely. You know, and I find if the middle bay that you had compost of me recently.
No, brilliant.
Right, when I finish the hot phase, say it's about 5 turns, something like that, I'll transfer it over into one of these, because it's surprising how much that will actually sink down. It's a bit of a, you know, you think, oh, look at that nice big pile, and then it shrinks down and down and down, and you think, oh, that's great. But that's all right. It's condensed into quite a little amount. Now I'll put it in here, and then I'll put in nettles and comfrey, and I'll layer it through. So as I'm pouring that in, I'll put in a layer of comfrey or nettles, anything green really, without the soil on. I mean, that's quite important. So anything green can be layered in this bin as you go, and I'm not trying to get it hot. If it goes a little bit warm, not too worried. I definitely don't want it hot, because what that's doing is comfrey is very high in nutrients, and a lot of the green matter is. I don't want that blowing off anywhere. I want it staying within the compost. You don't have to worry about the moisture level, because that should be fine, and that'll just help it break down even further. And then basically anything could be added at that stage without soil on, and that'll help just mixed in through it. This will take a couple months, It's no hurry with this, because hopefully you've been in a hurry, you've finished that bit, and then this lot is working to the next season. Have you got any questions about that bit?
Do you have to keep turning that bit, right?
Not really. It helps if you do, because you want the layers infused right the way through the compost. I would probably do it twice, say, and that's all. And it'll depend on ingredients as well, because sometimes you just haven't got them. But comfrey is so good, it's unbelievable. The flowers and the leaf, it all can go in there. That's no problem.
Would you use nettle as well?
Yeah, brilliant, but not the seed heads.
Not the seed.
You know, some say to go with the seeds. Sometimes it's a little bit of a. I don't always like using nettles because it's good for wildlife, and that's as important as anything else, really. But you know, I usually like chop that one down and leave the other one. You know, and the bees absolutely love them. If you get a comfrey patch on your pots, bees will absolutely love you for it, because they absolutely adore comfrey. Okay. So once it's been in there for 2 months and you've added all those nutrients, you'll find worms will get going in there. When you get worms in there, I'll feed them. This is my wife's favourite bit. So all it is veg scraps. All your kitchen scraps go into this bin afterwards, and I no longer turn it. It just all goes on top. That's very sprouting potato peelings, frozen, because potato peelings will make potatoes very easily. By freezing it, it makes it nice and easy for the worms to digest. This container is usually kept indoors, goes in the freezer, gets put into my allotment one, and the allotment one comes up, because you don't want that going back in the freezer. But if you can keep that clean, the better. Any green matter, banana, tea bags, tons of tea bags, all into the top of this one here, and let the worms just gradually take it in. And the difference in quality of what you produce between the hot compost, the compost after this phase, and the compost after the worms are finished is quite a large percentage. There's only one type of compost that's better than the worm compost, and that is solid worm compost, where all you do is put it through this sort of process on its own. But that's just making basically worm poo. But this is compost that you're refining, and you're letting the worms do that work for you.
Are you adding worms to it? Are you collecting them and then?
Depends. Usually they'll find the way in there. They did on this lot here. Usually they will. But what I often do is fill up a bin, get it all going, and then just slice off the top and move them worms and whatever's remaining over to the next one, and keep that one as the active bin. And then the compost in there is just like perfect, you know. Now this compost, this is a finished compost here. You can have a look at it in a minute if you like. It's perfect addition, and all that is wood chips, grass, and admittedly a secret ingredient that you won't have access to, which was apples. Because I do cider, in the autumn I got rid of a lot of my apples into the compost, and instead of doing the other phases, I'll just let them
Pulp in there.
yeah, and the worms absolutely loved it.
Chop
And
them
they,
all up, or just whole?
Yeah.
well, I do is
After cider.
yeah, you
see.
pulp it
Right.
anyway, so it's
Yeah.
just like a sloppy mess that goes in there, and that has increased the quality, and you can't recognise anything that's in there. There's the occasional little bit you can see in there, but not much at all. Hello! And that's it.
Well done.
It must sound silly, but use certain tea bags, because I know some have
Yes.
plastic in, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got to be careful.
Yeah, it's always the plant-based ones. Tetley's and PG Tips do them. Not any more expensive, so they don't cost you anything more. But this here, the worms will go through that as well, and you'll never see anyone back. Occasionally, you get mixed up and you buy the wrong tea bags, and then you'll see the ghosts
Yeah.
of the bags
The
left there.
Tetley's ones are alright then.
Yeah.
So it's got to be plant-based.
Yeah.
This will say on it, will it?
Yeah. It's usually quite in small writing for some reason, whereas the PG Tip ones is usually right on the front, nice and quite clear. But it takes a little bit of reading. Once you get used to it, it's fine now. And they just go in straight like that. It's absolutely perfect. Yeah.
So can I sorry. So we do the hot phase.
Yep.
that's all nice and hot.
So I'll just stop you a second. You don't have to do the next 2 phases.
Right.
The compost after the 18 days, if you just leave that alone and perhaps just bung on a few leaves, that will also end up as good compost. Using this phase here and the worms just increases the compost quality even further. So it's not essential, but you can do it.
Right, so let me just do a compost confession. All we do at the moment is just chuck everything. Weeds, soil, everything just goes in there, and then when it gets to the top, we forget about it for goodness knows how long. But I want to do it a bit more structurally.
Yeah,
so
that's
if
right.
well, don't we, Gary? he can just see the see the work. So we do the hot phase, then the nettle layer phase, and then you would add all
your kitchen scraps.
All this kitchen scraps until you get to the top.
No, it's actually surprising how much volume the actual worms do actually gobble up. And
at some point you've got to leave it though, do you?
Yeah, well, whenever you want then, really. Whenever you want to use it. I'm making compost for next autumn at the moment.
So you don't look at making compost as just getting rid of your scraps from the garden. You actively make it.
I'm sad enough to be like that, yeah. I actually enjoy the composting more than I do the veg wood. You know, weird, isn't it? But then again, sometimes it's quite a lot of work as well. To make a whole pile like that did take me 4 hours.
Yeah.
And 2 hours of that I'll be cutting the grass.
Right.
Thank you, Adrian, for finishing it off.
Yeah.
But so it is quite a bit of effort sometimes. But the turning bits is perhaps 10-15 minutes to do.
Right.
Because I do it the lazy way, it's actually relatively quick. It's not much work, to be honest with you. But just that initial build is probably the hardest work of the whole lot of it.
So hot phase, greeny layer phase until you've got lots of worms, and then you add feed, and then leave, and then in a couple of months later you should hopefully have some stuff to put in the ground.
Perfect. I actually grow potatoes in tubs, and I've tested the yield at using that stuff, this stuff, and the worms, and it's quite noticeable the bigger yield you get with the worms. So it definitely works. And also, I'd like to point out, on my plot, I don't use any manures, I don't use any fertiliser. All I use is this compost. So it works. You know, my crops won't be the best, but they'll be pretty good. So, any more questions?
Why, just the bit that I missed, why don't you just add that to that?
Which?
Oh,
you can do, yeah, you definitely can.
But what's the little bit of magic that you do all of that first and get that prepped and then you...
Well, because this takes a bit more of an effort. I get so little food scraps, it's unbelievable.
Okay.
So they're reserved for my worms. You know, the compost quality is so much better that this is just kept off. It could all get chucked in there. I've made compost at home from cat litter, no cat poo, and tea bags only, nothing else, and it's made good compost. I won't use it on the veg because you've got to be careful about cat litter and cat poo, but I'll be using it on the ornamental side. So you can actually make compost from a very limited range of ingredients if you want to.
Because the worms are doing all the work.
Yeah. Although I did add, when I make my own cider, and the yeast at the bottom.
Oh yeah.
They absolutely love that. They ate that in just a couple of days, which is quite unusual. Sliding around a bit.
Put it up in a good gear.
So, is there any other questions? Is that all right?
Yeah, thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, well done.
Well done.
Oh, if you see me wearing one of these, it's because I'm